Actually recording this on a different application on OBS instead of Ecamm Live today, just to experiment with it and see where it's at. I haven't used it in years and just kind of wanted to see, you know, if it's changed much or what the situation is with it. But anyway, this video is a quick review of this weekend's gigs. I played at the Kiawah pool and I played at the city market. I think maybe the most notable thing to talk about was the heat. It's very, very hot in Charleston in these days. I particularly noticed it yesterday at the city market. Just loading in and doing anything in this heat it just is more difficult. It affects hydration. And so I suppose that's something I could talk about. In singing, I learned this years ago. This weekend could be a good reminder. Being hydrated is really, really important. If you're going to be doing any singing, just making sure you drink water consistently is one of the best things you can do. Being well hydrated, it probably is the single best thing that you can do is to drink lots of water. More than practice, more than just about anything. When you're well hydrated, you just have way better control over your voice. If you're not, it sort of just robs you of a lot of the practice that you've done and a lot of technique that usually would be available to you is now just gone. A lot of tone. I particularly noticed that yesterday when even 45 minutes into the performance yesterday, my voice felt about as rough as it has felt in years. And so maybe that is something to learn and take away, that when you're in extreme heat, that might happen. And I'm not sure how to address that because I do think I was well hydrated, but 97 is what was on the forecast. But we got like a warning that went out where the heat index or whatever was into the 110s. Keep it simple. I'd rather not sing when it's that hot out. The Kiawah pool. Is there anything to say about the Kiawah pool? Maybe the thing to say about the Kiawah pool would be, I'll say this. This is a good topic to move through. When you're getting responses from the audience, a lot of times when you play a song, maybe you'll have some people will clap. In my shows for years, that's pretty much not the case. I mean, some people might want to a little bit, but I've learned to just keep the music flowing, and I never create breaks from between one song to the next. And I've learned to do that just because I feel like, on a personal level, I feel like it's a little bit of an awkward thing. Every time you finish playing a song, people got to clap. I don't know, I feel like a lot of times people just want to talk. And so then I don't want to be trying to force people to do things that overall they would rather not be doing. The main thing that they want from me is just to provide a vibe, provide music, something that's enjoyable for them to listen to. There's a question that I have as to what extent that's a cultural shift and to what extent that's something that's unique to my shows. And I'm starting to think maybe to some extent it is at least in part a cultural shift, that at local music shows people just clap less these days. And it's not just something that I've cultivated, unique to me, or maybe some other people do the same thing, but that I cultivated that culture within my own show, or it's a response that I create because of how I conduct my show. But I did have a couple that clapped at the end after I performed. So I performed like 2.5 hours straight, and then a guitar string broke. I've been using the same guitar strings for like 2.5 months now, which is amazing. And so if you're interested in those guitar strings, I've made a video about them. It's unbelievable to get that much life out of the strings and still feel like I had usable tone, at least through the PA. They still sound pretty good. But I went ahead and changed all the strings, and then I came back and I finished out the last like 15 or 20 minutes. And then I hadn't had any kind of dynamic with the audience, and so rather than say, thank you for coming out and whatnot, I just wrapped it up, finished my last song, turned everything down, and then there was just sort of a pause for a while, and in terms of some time went by, maybe about 2 minutes, and then one of the couples that was dining there at the pool, it's like a poolside restaurant kind of area, they just clapped, like pretty boldly, in a way where they clapped with confidence, even though knowing they were going to be the only ones that were going to clap because of the timing. They put forward just a genuine clap. And so I really appreciated that on multiple levels. On one level, it's just a nice thing to do. On another level, it meant that the music connected more deeply with them, that they would, I'll say it like this. It's not to risk, embarrassing themselves or to risk having an opinion in public. We'll put it that way. To risk having an opinion in public. They were willing to do that in order to try to just say thanks to me. In my experience, most people don't want to do that. Like, people will clap. If you create a culture of clapping or a pattern of clapping between songs, then you'll have a lot of people join in. But I guess the point I'm making is most people tend to just kind of follow what the norm is or what seems to be the appropriate thing to do in that particular situation. It takes more of a rare connection or rare people that are going to publicly display an opinion first. And so I take that as a testament to they really did appreciate it, and they have a strong sense of self, and they have a strong opinion within themselves that what I did was worth applause. And of course, I think that within myself, I feel like I know that, and I know that it, to at least to some extent, I know the time that I've put in, I know the work, the miles, the slogging it out in the gigs and pushing myself. So, and studying the stuff, working on the sound, working on the guitar strings, working on finding the right luthier, finding the right guitar, finding the right pedals, tweaking them, finding the right PA, working with different PA systems, dialing in my PA system, figuring out where to place the speakers, how to point the speakers, working within so many different spaces so I can get used to dialing in a sound for these kind of environments that will be present but not imposing. There's so many different aspects of what you do to work on, and I've put the work in. So I know that I'm delivering something that's on a pretty high level. I'm not new to it. Well, I also know that music is extremely subjective, and so I don't presume that anybody is ever going to like what I'm doing or be able to see the work that I've put into it. There are people that have flashier techniques, and I have a different approach that isn't as flashy, and I just don't really like the flashy stuff. I think it's kind of nice to have in the toolbox at least a little bit of it, but it's just not my thing. I like the smoother, more peaceful kind of stuff. This couple took a step forward in order to show some gratitude, or just to uplift me, to show that there are people in the audience that were listening and appreciated what I did. And then there was one other guy that came up a little bit after that, as I was getting a little further into packing up, and just asked me directly what my Venmo was. And I talked to my wife about this, but a lot of times when people ask me, when money starts to be on the table, they're going to give me a tip, I start to feel anxious typically, because I don't know, money is a tense thing typically for me, and I don't want people to tip me too much. Like, I had an interaction a few weekends ago at the city market where somebody offered to tip me, and I just turned it down because I found out that they worked at the local restaurant nearby. And I just figured I'm going to be okay without their tip. They probably need it more than I do. And I think that they took offense to that. I think they thought it meant something that it didn't. That interaction, that relationship soured. And it's difficult because there's subtle things that are being communicated. Any particular action could mean a lot of different things, and everyone has to try to interpret what they mean. And in this particular case, and I think moving forward, it's just learning from that past lesson. If somebody wants to tip me, maybe it's just really none of my business to try to wonder if they should or shouldn't tip me, and I really just shouldn't even think about that and accept it. And if they want to tip me, that's their choice, and I accept it. And just whether they tip me or not, and whatever amount it is, it's really just the gesture, the intent. At a just base level, just be grateful. I do try to understand, what's going on. Like, was this person deeply moved? What does this mean? So I understand the relationship, and I try to understand it to the best of my ability. And I feel like it's tough, but the responsiveness of a crowd, that despite that I conduct my shows where there's no applause, and in this particular instance, I wasn't sure how connected people were to the music. The last time I played at the pool, eventually some families were dancing, and I played things like Footloose, La Bamba, Hot, 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 and My Girl. And there was like a moment where maybe it could have happened, but at least my observable cues would lead me to believe people weren't as into it. I thought, to some extent, maybe that has to do with the heat. Energy levels are just lower. It's harder for me to push, and I just need to be respectful of the fact that doing anything is just going to be harder, and I'm going to have less available energy levels that create results, and it's just going to be harder to get there. It's harder to do that. For me to do that work, it's going to be harder for other people to want to go there. As I was moving the rest of my gear to the car, the manager came up and said, we had lots of complimentary feedback tonight. Great job. 3 different positive feedbacks, which where people make an intentional effort to communicate that to you more than just applause. It just demonstrates that people were appreciating it, people were listening. And so sometimes, even if you don't see the cues, it's happening. And I guess this one, for the moral of the story of, just put the work in, respect yourself, the conditions of what's going on, and be patient and live with the results, and trust the process, maybe something along those lines. It worked out for me. I feel like I could have easily felt that I needed to just really ramp it up and push really hard because the responses were a little bit lower than typical. Like I wasn't seeing so much toe tapping or people bobbing their heads a little bit somewhere, but instead I, in the moment, just decided to keep the vibe that I had and allow myself to just be me, and recognizing that today's hot so I don't overwork myself. Hopefully that's useful to you. Hopefully you got something out of that. If you have any questions, if there's anything I could clarify or dig into a little more in the comments, let me know. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.